guess looking back on the year that was and going into next year, was there a moment for you that was especially difficult to handle?
Definitely that first lockdown. So we had to shield for 3 months because my mum has a condition that means that she's on the extremely vulnerable list. I have that genetic trait, which means I'm also on the vulnerable list. So we had to shield and couldn't go out or do anything. That was quite difficult to manage, especially for someone that's as much a nature lover as I am. I couldn't use my National Trust membership, which sounds so like silly when you say it out loud, but it really was a big deal for me. And I needed kind of that outdoor to get outside to feel sane, and I couldn't. But yeah, that was really tough. But having a balcony helped. Being surrounded by plants helped. Having a window with trees outside helped. But yeah, it was a shock to the system, I think.
So did you just order just a whole bunch more plants and to really turn it into sort of
I feel like we
it looked quite
tended them
nature
more.
behind,
Yeah,
yeah,
there is a lot going on. There's some that you can't see. There's like plants everywhere.
yeah.
I like to live in a greenhouse. It helps me think.
It definitely
I
helps.
don't like being cooped up. So yeah.
So what was that like to not only juggle that, but also then handle work, handle the stresses that brings,
Yeah.
being compounded by the uncertainty of just everything going forward. How do you handle that?
I actually found work really helpful because then I couldn't focus too much on panicking about mum's health or anything like that. We thought, okay, well, this is the situation as we have it. Can't really change anything about this. How do I now manage this new way of living? We did have a lot to work out in so timing. I found I had to be a lot more strict with when I start and finish work. Just from because even though I found it easy to just carry on working, I knew that long term that was just not a good pattern to start, especially if I've already started feeling cooped up. All I'm going to do is end up making myself feel super trapped, and that all I'm doing is working constantly. So having like a routine helped. I think a lot of it was choices, because I realized that I could really choose to only see the stress in the situation or see the things I actually had some control over. And I think it's been hard, but that's been the one thing that I think has grown in me and helped me through this time, is being able to be like, okay, no, I actually always have a choice. And recognizing what my choices then are in that moment. And then once I make a decision, I'm like, well, that was my choice. And I have to just kind of go with that now.
And how do you do that though? I suppose it sounds really easy, just the way
Yeah,
you
I
said
know,
it.
it does sound easy.
But what sort of things are you able to share that you used that really helped you to be able to make that little transition?
Yeah, well, so for me, I'm a Christian, so everything I do is kind of grounded by my faith. So when I work, I don't think about just working as a job to do, but actually, the Bible talks about even our work be whatever we're working, let it be as if it's to God. So the quality of your work matters, the attitude you have towards that matters, and it's in all kind of spheres, all aspects of that of my life, and prayer is a big part of that as well. I pray a lot, not enough still, but a lot. And I know some people focus on sort of mindfulness and things like that, which does work for people. But for me, that's always been prayer. So when I think about people talk about mindfulness, I get all of that from my prayer life. And so when there are moments where I feel like this is outside of my control, I believe in a God who understands and empathizes with suffering and pain, and still carries peace. Jesus is known as the Prince of Peace. So that's been one of the biggest things, because then I'm like, okay, no, this is not like, I'm not the only one who understands this. And I have someone to turn to. And I also have a mentor who is absolutely incredible. She's very practically minded, so it's really helpful. So if I'm ever being irrational and I don't realize it, she points it out for me, which is really helpful. I've got a great support network in, I know, just friendships, but also my church community. So when we were in that first lockdown, we couldn't even go out to get food. Like, it was that serious, but people would come and drop food over for us. send me notes to say, keep going, you're doing a great job. I'm like, you don't know what I'm doing, but thank you anyway. I mean, I could have been a hot mess in the background, but there was so much encouragement from outside, which is kind of a long way to say you kind of can't do this stuff on your own. I think having people and that you can turn to really matters. And for me, I know personally as well, having someone other than myself, so having God who's beyond myself, helped as well, because I know that there was someone who I put my faith in that's outside of this situation, but also kind of in control ultimately. And so I didn't need to panic. There's a saying that my mum and my pastor always use, which is there's no panic in heaven. Like nothing is a surprise. And so I don't need to be surprised by what's happening, because it's not actually like out of the blue. And so to sort of rest assured that there is something to be learned and taken away from every situation. I rambled on.
No, I found it really interesting to hear that, because I think we all need to find ways to find that bit of a reassurance, and just knowing that the path that you're on is okay. That everything is going to be okay. And I think
it is that assurance.
That's wonderful to hear that you've got something that you can really turn to in a real sort of intangible way. And for you, I'd imagine that in terms of the conversations that you would have had with your mentor or with at your church, are you able to share any moment that that really stands out for you, that I suppose was a bit of a turning point in sort of uplifting yourself and feeling like that you do have it under control, that you are doing okay? Absolutely fine if you don't, by the way.
No, there was, I mean, some of it was from before the pandemic that kind of has worked its way out. It feels like the tools that I kind of learned before the pandemic, this helped in kind of seeing me through. One of them, there's two analogies actually. One is by Rick Warren, who wrote Purpose Driven Life, if you've ever read it. But he said that he used to see life as a roller coaster. You were on this thing, there were highs, there were lows, kind of strapped in for dear life, and that was it. But he said as he got older, he sort of started seeing it more as a set of train tracks. And it's carrying you along. But on the one side, you have a lot of bad things happening, and on the other side, a lot of good things happening. And that basically they're always simultaneously happening. And I remember that striking me. And I mean, my history and background, we've been through a lot as a family. I couldn't even begin to start telling you the whole story, but the entire time my mum has always had a really like grateful attitude to everything. And I'm like, how do you cultivate that? And she's always said that there's always something to be thankful for. And so that train track analogy really struck me, because it was that same thing that my mum had said, which is that actually whenever you feel like everything is going wrong, you feel really, really down, look harder, because there's definitely something good happening at the same time. I mean, one of which for me, I can tell you. So during this entire time, I've applied for indefinite leave to remain, which I got. And awesome. Now I have my British ceremony coming up as well. So it's like, yes, it's a pandemic and there's bad stuff happening, but I get to stay in the country. It's brilliant. So there is always something good happening alongside the bad. Yeah. And so it's kind of like cultivating that attitude of gratefulness. I think that's one of the things that comes up a lot in my mentoring, is sort of a way of thinking that goes, okay, we could have a mentoring session where I show up and just complain about everything. That doesn't really change anything. But a lot of the time we spend time talking through what is the good that's happening in your life right now? What is it that you're grateful for, that you see potential in? And so that then drives the conversation, which I think does make a huge difference. Have I lost the question? What was the question again?
No, it was just speaking about conversations and any moments that stood out for you. But I think you have just captured it really well. But it's just nice hearing some positive news. That's great. We've been through that more than once. So the anxiety that always brings is immense. So that that relief. It's just relief. I feel
It
like
really
that's all it
is
is.
relief. It really is. Because
Yeah.
even though you have your residency permit, there's always a voice in the back of your mind saying, what if they change their
Yeah,
mind?
and you've done every question, everything's like absolutely
Like, what
correct,
if you
and yet,
miss something
yeah,
and now
you
you
miss
have to
something.
spend all of that money and do it all over
Yeah,
again? You're like, no.
yeah. If you were to sum up the year, how would you sum it up
Ooh,
in a really short, if you possibly can?
one long bleep test.
That sounds painful.
But it is. But I was always that kid who actually went until they were going to drop. Because I'm like, no, this thing won't defeat me. Oh, yes, it
Yeah.
did. But I mean, hopefully it doesn't. That's not a good analogy. I should do
Yeah,
it to everyone. That's that's such a downer.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
does feel like that. You're just like,
yeah.
you keep going and going. You're like, is it over yet? You're looking at the teacher saying, can we stop now? I feel like Christmas is that for us. We're all looking forward to it. Like, yes, we get to stop. Then it's 2021. I mean, as if the year changing over just changes all of life. But anyway, that's not uplifting. Let's try a different one.
I think the Christmas part was the uplifting part. But I suppose going into next year on a very positive note, what are you really optimistic for on
Oh my gosh, yes.
professional or personal?
I mean, personally, Japan
Ooh.
2021 is a thing. It is like 17 years in the making, Michael.
Oh, I
And
love
that is the
Japan.
dream. And even now, I'm putting a plan together. So if for whatever reason there's still restrictions, I'm hitting up Francis. Francis, PRCA Northeast Asia,
Yeah,
Volunteers Tribute. Hook me up. I will get there.
I will write that down and pass that over.
Professionally, and I guess more seriously, I think I'm quite excited to see how the new world kind of gets used to its new skin. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. Like, I think we're quite humanity itself is quite good at adapting and growing and getting used to the new ways of living. So I think it would be interesting to see how that comes about. I think 2020 we've been trying stuff out, trying to figure it out. In 2021 we'll kind of set ourselves. We have a fresh year to kind of do whatever we're going to do. And I think in some ways it's kind of a privilege as well that we get to be the generation that sets it all up for
Yep.
the future generations and any future pandemics that do arise or not, that we've actually set up a whole way of living that gets them through that. So that's quite exciting, I think.